set up. Hi. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Where would you like us?
Governor, you're right in the middle.
Oh, God.
You are all the way down on the end.
Good afternoon.
You're right there.
Who brought all the cameras?
Have to stand because I'm so short. Well, good afternoon. My name is Liz Russell. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs here at Eastern Maine Community College, and it is truly a pleasure for you to join us today in celebration of Women's History Month. We've got a distinguished panel here that I will be introducing momentarily, but before I do so, I want to recognize our female students who are sacrificing a great deal to improve their lives and the lives of their families. So if our students could stand, please. This is your day. So as you can see, we have three panelists. Before I introduce them, I would like to say thank you to Shane Boyce and to Marwa Hughes, who have both been instrumental in getting this event together. So I would like to introduce our panelists. First is a woman of firsts. Governor Mills was the first female criminal prosecutor in the state of Maine, the first female attorney general in the state of Maine, and of course, the first female governor of the state of Maine. So I introduce the Honorable Janet Mills, Governor of the great state of Maine. First also describes Marwa Hassanien, Northern Lights' first Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and one of Bangor's first women of color to be elected to public office. Marwa is the chair of the Bangor School Committee, and a little fun fact is that she served as an adjunct English instructor here at Eastern Maine Community College. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to Tracie Travers, who serves as the Vice President for Workforce Development for Jobs for Maine's graduates. And for those of you who are not familiar with JMG, they are a nonprofit organization that supports students from middle school through college and into the workforce. It's a very valuable program, and we are proud to have a JMG presence on our campus. So, now it's your turn. And we're going to begin today by having each of you share a little bit about yourself and the journey that you've taken to ascend to your current leadership position. Governor Mills, would you like to begin?
Oh, I guess. Lord. Thank you for having us here, Liz. This is a great opportunity to talk about women in leadership and women in non-traditional occupations, which is what I'd like to focus on here today. We have workforce issues in Maine and across the country, and we need more women to get engaged in non-traditional occupations. Yes, I was the first woman DA, first woman AG, first woman governor, but not the last. And when it comes to politics, I'm happy to say that we have 4 women leaders in the legislature right now. We have half of our congressional delegation are women, Senator Collins and Congresswoman Pingree, many school board members, and many JMG nonprofit members are women, and we're branching out, but we need to do so much more. I could tell you about my history if you really want to learn, but if you really want to know. But, you know, I started work as a paper girl, delivering newspapers when I was like 5, 6 years old. My older brothers were organizing the route and taking the profits, of course. You know, they had me to drag the wagon and throw the newspapers on the porch steps. So I learned early in life how to get up early, get to work early, be in a routine, all those things, which is not atypical of Maine people, Maine families. When I was a teenager, I worked slinging hash in the local Greasy Spoon. That taught me a lot of people skills right there. And I went to college, but I did not go, my course in life was not a straight shot like many people in Maine and elsewhere. I took time off, went back to work, went back to school, went back to work, and made it happen. Ultimately got my degree, and then worked for several more years before I came back to Maine and went to law school, and found that Maine is really where I wanted to come back to, where I wanted to stay. But my message to you today is to do what you want to do what you can do, work hard at what you want, and you can get there. You can get there whether you want to be a welder or a police officer or a lawyer, a doctor, a scientist, electrician, a construction engineer. You can do it, and you can do it in this state, and the state of Maine is here to help you get what you need and succeed in our state. So I look forward to the conversation, engaging with you and what your observations are, what you're seeing out there, what you think people need in Maine to grow and to live and raise a family here and be a productive member of our society. Thank you.
Tracie.
Sure, thank you, Liz. So I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about my personal background and then carry it into my professional background, and in the end I'll bring it all together, if that's okay with you. So I grew up in a small town in Maine. I was the youngest of 6 children. My dad died when I was 4 years old, and we all lived above a gas station. My mom would clean the gas station below us to help keep us together in the same apartment. When I was 10 years old, we were able to buy a house through the Farmers Home Association. And by buying a home, my mom needed to work 2.5 jobs just to, again, keep us together and help take care of our kids, help take care of her kids. What I learned from that is people living in poverty can work really, really hard and never really make it. And what I also learned from that is that I needed to have an education or a credential beyond a high school diploma in order to have a living wage and to be able to make it. So I knew I needed to go to college. Well, then when I was 16, I had my daughter. So that could have really deterred a lot of people, but for me, I brought my daughter to college with me. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and though I had tremendous support from the university that I attended, I stopped out of college in my 3rd year and went to work. And I worked as an ed tech in a public school system. So for the next 17 years, I would work with students who, in alternative education settings in the public school and in the residential school. And what I learned from that was school students really need to be met where they are. And everyone wants to do better, and it's important to us to help students and their families do better. Because no matter where a student comes from, their families are always very, very important to them. After I left working with students who are into alternative ed, I had a variety of career paths. So there's not a career ladder, as our governor showed us, there's a jungle gym of careers, right?
Oh, yeah.
I also worked for an association that focused on constructions and the trades, and there I learned the significant value of career and technical education and what it does for students and what it does for our economy. I also worked for the Career Center and learned there that adults really needed more help. They needed help to know how to write a resume, and I also learned about all of the opportunities with the people and the funds the Career Center has for us as Mainers. I did a little bit of training and learned that my message, that it wasn't always about me, but it was more about the message and my impact to the audience. And then I started working for JMG. I started working for JMG 10 years ago. and I was a specialist in the classroom, which I absolutely adored. I loved working with students and their families. And throughout these 10 years, I've had several promotions, and now I'm the Vice President of Workforce Development for JMG. The reason I stay at JMG is because it literally feeds my soul. The students that I work with and the students that our specialists work with are the students, they were me. So we work with students who are economically disadvantaged, students who have stopped out of college and need help navigating their next path. We are mentors, and we work with people in our school partners and our community members and our businesses to help make those connections for students to be able to pursue meaningful career paths, to help lift them to livable wages, and to help their families learn that each one of us is important to the state of Maine. JMG helped me. They appreciated my own experiences, and they also elevated me to a position where I could impact others. And I truly believe that our specialists do that for our students, and our students help teach us to move forward and get up every single day. So even though my past careers were not in sync, as JMG is, every single thing that I did has gotten me to where I am today. And what I mean by that is sitting here with you, the future of Maine, people who are setting things aside to be able to get things done and improve their lot in life, improve their families, and improve their destination. And I'm ecstatic to be sitting here with you, the students of EMCC. I'm ecstatic to meet Marwa, and may I say, to be able to sit beside the governor of Maine. I don't have words for that, so thank you so much.
Marwa.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for having us. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Shane, wherever he is in the back. Thank you for inviting us. It's such an honor to be here with Janet, Governor Mills. She was one of my trainers, so someone I really, she just inspires me so much, and Tracie as well. Giving you a little bit about my background, a little different than my colleagues here, but not very different at the same time. So I am a first-generation American. I am a daughter of Egyptian immigrants who immigrated to the U.S. for, as cliche as that may sound, in search of the American dream. They wanted a better future for their children. Mind you, my parents were middle-class Egyptians, middle to upper class, so they were doing fine. They were both engineers, but they knew still that, the challenges of public education and so forth for their children, so they came here for that. Education was huge, and for many immigrant parents, that's something that they bring their children to America for, in hopes of a better future for their children. Very, very hardworking parents. And so they brought us to Oklahoma, of all places, so we were jokingly called the Egyptian Okies. But, they raised us there, so we were raised in Stillwater, Oklahoma. That's where the Oklahoma State University Cowboys are. Some of you are nodding. But so it was nice because it was a diverse area with international students and international faculty and staff. So I feel very blessed and honored to have been raised in a beautiful town, very similar to here, to Bangor and Orono, and where a lot of diverse backgrounds were all around us. Again, education was huge, so at a very young age, my parents made it known that college is is a must. If you want to go beyond college, that's even better. That was something that, again, as immigrants in a foreign, new country, was important, especially to establish yourself. And so I went to Oklahoma State University, did my bachelor's in technical writing, and I was very fascinated at a very young age with linguistics and second language acquisition and everything that pertained to me, because I was raised bilingual and bicultural, and so that was always heavy on my mind and heavy in my heart too, especially with immigrant parents. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion always was always on my mind. Talking to my parents about the cultural barriers, the language barriers. So that was something that I think I was keen to at a very young age. let's fast forward to my adult life. So I moved to the Northeast with my husband. He was already in Connecticut, and he was a J1 visa holder, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. So being a physician who was on J1 visa status, basically you either have to go back to your country, my husband's Egyptian, or you work in a medically underserved area. And this is what brought us to Maine. So Bangor is considered a medically underserved area, and the caveat is that you work for 3 years, you're given your green card, and then you can go anywhere in the US. And even as an American citizen, I wasn't able to help my husband. He had to do that. And so we interviewed in all different, types of places, like Biloxi, Mississippi, and like some really frightening, intimidating areas. And then we interviewed here at St. Joseph's Hospital in Bangor, Maine, and we looked at each other and we were like, why is this a medically underserved area? Because we interviewed in June. And so we were like, this is gorgeous. And then the winter hit and we realized why. But then, so we thought we can do 3 years. We had an 18-month-old little boy, and we thought we can do 3 years and leave, get out of here. We'll go to California, we'll go to Florida. Well, we've been here 18 years now.
All right.
Really established roots. We had 3 more children born at Eastern Maine Medical Center. One is, my oldest now is a freshman at UMaine, and then we have 2 girls, a senior and a freshman at Bangor High, and a 4th grader at Mary Snow. So we've really, again, established roots here, fallen in love with the area. And so as a result, I have worked effortlessly, like really, really hard, in bringing people like ourselves, to stay here. We need it for economic development. So I immediately immersed myself in different organizations to help with this cause, if you will. So I placed myself in the Maine Multicultural Center Board. I worked with Literacy Volunteers of Bangor. I'm on the board of the auxiliary of the Penobscot Medical Society to really, get people to come here and stay here because we need them. And for me, I believe, because I was in that same situation, I believe it's mutually, beneficial. And so I immersed myself back into education. So I did my master's at University of Maine. I'm doing my PhD now in literacy education.
Oh.
But then came this position with Northern Light Health. They were looking for a diversity, equity, and inclusion director. I was interviewed, I think several different candidates from across the country. Luckily I got the position, and I get to work with amazing people across our state doing this work, and with equity and inclusion, and especially diversity. A lot of people don't understand what that means. They think we're just focusing on race or ethnicity, and that's not entirely accurate. We really look at all the different dimensions of diversity, including sexual orientation, race, gender. We do a lot of gender equity and gender bias. I do a lot of training with that. So I feel very blessed and honored to work for an organization that is allowing us to having these difficult conversations. They are uncomfortable sometimes, but we're leaning into this discomfort together as an organization. We have an amazing CEO, Tim Dentry, who sometimes when I bring up a conversation or a module or a training that I think will rock the boat, he's like, rock the boat, Marwa. Do it, go forth. Yeah. So I feel very, very honored to be doing this work. And lastly, one little piece that I will speak to, I think later in the presentation, is public office. As I said, Governor Mills was one of my trainers for Emerge, because I really wanted to give back to the community, and because I never think I have enough to do. I really wanted to run for office, so I applied for Emerge, and Emerge is basically, they train Democratic women to run for office. And luckily I ran in 2019. There were 2 positions open, 4 candidates, and luckily I won. But I learned from Governor Mills and other great leaders how to campaign and effectively run for office and win. You run to win. And I was vice chair my 2nd year, and this is my 3rd year in office, and I'm chair. And I feel very blessed and honored to have these opportunities and to really give back to the community that I fell in love with. And I want to tell each and every one of you that it's, do not let fear be a factor. Don't let it stop you, because every single day I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I'm here. But I push myself and I challenge myself, and I think it's really important that each and every one of you does it. Don't let your diversity or your diverse backgrounds or anything really stop you. So.
Great.
Thank you. I'm a little too short for these chairs. So, I'd like to ask each of you what female leader you admire most and why.
Current or past? Or...
Yeah, right. Would you like to start?
I'm
Dr.
happy to
Mills?
start, if you like. I'm going to get up so that my voice will carry a little bit better. Well, when I was growing up in Farmington, Maine, there was a little lady down the road in Skowhegan, about 20 miles away, who started out, never went to college, who was a telephone operator for a while, and did some journalism, wrote some articles for the local paper, eventually got married to a guy. The guy went to Congress, and he died suddenly of a heart attack. His wife, Margaret, decided to run for his seat in the early 40s, and she won. She was in Congress, and then she ran for the U.S. Senate in 1948, beating 3, I believe, millionaires just in the primary. And she remained in the Senate until the early 70s, the late 70s, and her name was Margaret Chase Smith. And she was a friend of my family, a role model for many of us and many people my age, maybe younger as well. But she showed courage when she stood up to, she was the only woman in the Senate, and for many years the only woman to serve in both the House and the Senate. In 1950, Joseph McCarthy, Senator Joseph McCarthy, was on a tirade, and he was blacklisting people from the arts, from writing and journalism, and he was destroying people's careers. There was people were committing suicide because of the cruel things he had done and said about them, making up things about people and labeling them communists, which at that time, of course, was sort of a dirty word. People were shut out of their careers. Their families were devastated. And Margaret Chase Smith was the only person who stood up on the floor of the U.S. Senate and spoke to him directly. And she's called a profile in courage for that reason. John F. Kennedy wrote a book about profiles in courage, and he remarked on her status in particular. She wrote her creed, which I always think about, is that public service must be more than doing a job efficiently and honestly. It must be a complete dedication to the people and the nation with full recognition that every human being is entitled to courtesy and consideration. That constructive criticism is not only to be expected, but sought. That smears are not only to be expected, but fought. That honor is to be earned, but not bought. And so, she's a hero in my book, and always will be. Somebody whose creed is something to live up to in public service or in private sector. Thank you.
Why don't we go with Marwa?
Sure. This is a hard one. There's so many amazing women that I admire. But earlier this morning I posted on social media about International Women's Day, and I wished all the beautiful women in my life a happy Women's Day. And it made me really think about my mother. Again, kind of cliche, but she is someone who I aspire to be every single day. Especially, again, as an immigrant woman, coming here not speaking a word of English was extremely difficult, and I can't imagine going to a country that I don't know anyone. You leave your entire family behind, you don't speak the language, and then you're kind of just immersed in that, and my dad, they're both engineers, both of my parents are engineers, but she supported my dad, just dropped everything to support my dad through grad school. And having, again, 3 children to raise on your own. I remember even, eventually her English got better, but I remember even with my younger brother, I would go to parent-teacher conferences and kind of help translate. And so here's this fierce, amazing woman who actually, became everyone's mother. She opened our house up to everybody that was similar to her, who came as a student or a faculty member or anyone really, and just, that Egyptian hospitality, that you feed people until they can't breathe. So, that was her. She fed everybody, people, and she helped everyone, especially, new Americans who came to the area, who didn't know how to get a driver's license, who didn't know how to open a bank account. So she was the go-to person who really gave back to the community. And then, she was an Arabic language teacher for a while, but then she worked for it was called the Family Resource Center on campus. And again, just really tried to bridge the gaps and break down barriers, those cultural barriers that prevent people from getting to know one another and to love one another. So she really kind of, again, everybody in Stillwater is a tiny town like Bangor, but everybody loves her, people know her really well. And sadly, my dad passed away 4 months ago due to COVID, but it was really sad. But, everybody, she doesn't want to leave Stillwater. I'm trying to get her to move up here, but she doesn't want to leave because that's home. That's where, everybody knows her, everybody loves her. She's been really embraced by the community. So that's someone, that I look up to, and I'm like, if I can be half the woman that she is, then I will have done well.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracie.
Thank you. And again, on behalf of International Women's Day, I wanted to speak about Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. She was a pediatrician in Bayview, California. She is of a Jamaican heritage and moved to America when she was 4 years old. Dr. Harris treated thousands of kids in her facility and kept noticing that a lot of these students had the same types of health issues, and the health issues included diabetes in 5-year-old children, students with depression, children with high blood pressure, and the other part of the health was those parents were also, they were children of incarcerated parents or children who were being raised in abusive environments or environments that were not stable. So Nadine said, is there a correlation here? I see this problem. What is the root cause of this problem? There's got to be something. So she started conducting some research, and that's when she learned about adverse childhood experiences and the study that had 17,000 people and the impact adverse childhood experiences have on health. And she took that information and started sharing it with the families, the parents, the children, started helping build resilience building strategies for the kids, but also started teaching the parents how to deal with stress better. She also started speaking with her colleagues and teaching other health professionals about adverse childhood experiences. From that, she created a TED Talk, and she also wrote an impactful book called The Deepest Well. So I recognized Dr. Harris because of her leadership skills. She recognized that there was a problem. Many of us see problems, but we don't have the time or the mind capacity to say what is actually happening here. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris said, what is actually happening here? And then she spoke with the families involved. So she lifted the voices of the people who were experiencing this and heard them and researched and then found ways to find solutions and then started educating all of us to be better. So those qualities are true reasons I wanted to speak about Dr. Nadine Burke Harris today.
Nice. So Marwa, we're going to start with you this time. If an aspiring young woman or leader were to ask you for one bit of advice, what would you say to them?
Only one?
Only one.
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I think if I only had to give one advice, I would say, be teachable. We all of us usually think that we know everything there is to know, but we don't know what we don't know, right? So open yourself up. If someone calls you out on something, don't be defensive. I think it's part of human nature that we immediately, have that wall that goes up and we're defensive and we're agitated. I would say open yourself up, take it all in, especially in the line of work that I do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's hard work. it's heavy. A lot of people ask me questions, like the pronouns, for example, usage. Like, I don't understand that, and I'm afraid of making a mistake. So I tell people to wear your heart on your sleeve, be honest, be kind to yourself, but be open for, constructive criticism, and be humble enough to absorb it all. We're only human, we'll make mistakes, but be teachable. I think that would be the biggest thing that I always teach my children.
Nice. Tracie.
Thank you. So, as a leader, I've learned that I don't work independently. Though many of us are taught that we have to be independent and strike out on our own, the fact of the matter is I work very interdependently and work with so many people so my bit of advice is to develop meaningful relationships. And it's meaningful relationships with people that you are similar to and people that you have differences with. And part of having a meaningful relationship with someone is having trust with that person, believing that that person is doing the absolute best that they can. So part of a relationship is believing in people, because you'll also want them to believe in you, that you're doing the absolute best that you can. And the only way to make positive, lasting change is through those relationships.
Thank you. Governor Mills.
Thanks. Again, I'm gonna stand so my voice will carry a little bit. Well, I wanna say, be tough, be compassionate, don't let anybody put you down, a lot of things like that. But I think the most important thing is to be informed. No matter what you do, whether you have a family now or later, whether you're working in one area or another, just make sure, a normal citizen, you gotta be informed and find objective sources of information. We are saturated with social media and information and data bits all the time, every minute of every day. Find the best sources that you think are objective and stay in touch not only with your community, whether you run for office or just be involved. Stay in touch with your community, stay in touch with your state, stay in touch with your world. We're seeing right now how important it is that we stay informed, that we take part in our democracy, because it is so fragile. The people of Ukraine never took it for granted. They're not taking it for granted now. Stay informed and help us preserve our democracy in the state and the country that we love.
Tracie, we'll start with you on this one. We tell our students that they should find balance in their school life, their work life, and their personal life. How do you balance your career, personal life, and passions?
I found it really important to talk to the people involved in my life. So one way that I practiced balance was to talk to my supervisor, the people that I supervise, my spouse, about what it was that I needed and what it was that they needed, and then what our expectations were together, so that then we could mutually work on my own balance. One thing, I had a conversation with the president and CEO of JMG. This is not even a month ago, Craig Larrabee, and I went into his office because a lot of times women want to, we believe we can do absolutely everything and put in 110% when mathematically you can't do that. So I went to Craig and I said, I never treat myself. I have a facial planned, and it's in the middle of the workday, and I really don't want to take vacation time to be able to just go and have a facial. And he said, Tracie, are you kidding me? You work so hard, you're so dedicated to this company, please go and take care of yourself. So being able to have conversations with our supervisors and with our partners to say, I can do this, I cannot do that. I need this, and I don't need that, is one way I was able to practice better work-life balance. And the word pursue our passions, for the longest time I didn't know what my passion was. So when I was in the audience, I was always afraid that I did not have a passion, so what is actually wrong with me?
Just named it.
Right, and then I named it. So my passion is impacting students and working with students, because today's students are tomorrow's employees and tomorrow's workforce and our leaders. And they're the people that we need to have an impact in order to help this great state of Maine and to continue to improve this great state of Maine. So anything that helps me work with students is helping me to pursue my passion. And then I also like to find things that are invigorating for myself and that make me laugh, because my passion is not only working for students in Maine, but it's also something I may not even realize. Like, I just started opening up a cookbook and cooking away, and I absolutely loved it. So giving myself time to pursue things to see if I actually enjoy them. And Mara and I were speaking in the room before we came over. I use Google Calendar like nobody's business. I plan my 1 hour meeting and then 30 minutes after that to do the follow-up work. I book in my time to exercise, I book in my time to spend time with family, and I also book in time that says busy. I'm not busy, but I want to be busy doing something for me, so.
Oh, my. That's great.
Governor
Oh,
Mills.
thanks. I think your passion is the same as mine, is the same as Marwa's. Your passion is people. My passion is people. Your passion is people. You love people. That's why we're here. And let me just tell you, my personal life, well, to fit it in a thimble right now. Balance, I don't know, it's like this. But, you know, some years ago, when I was district attorney of Androscoggin, Franklin, and Oxford counties, I met my husband. I met and married my husband, Stan, who was a widower with 5 daughters. They were ages 4 to 16 when we met, 6 to 18 roughly when we got married. So balance? There was no balance. Suddenly I was a single woman in my late 30s, no kids, and suddenly I'm the stepmother to 5 girls. Well, that taught me to try to achieve some balance somehow, sort of sink or swim. And the girls are all grown up now. We're very good friends. I have 5 lovely grandchildren. My husband passed away 7 years ago, so I live alone in the Blaine house at home, and I have a house in Farmington I take care of too, live in. But my grandchildren are also my passion. And just night before last, I got to visit the 3-year-old and 5-year-old who are now reading to me. And during the pandemic, we would get on FaceTime, and they would be making tuna noodle casserole, and I'd be sort of giving them instructions. And I mean, just seeing the world through other people's eyes and little people's eyes is a great experience. So I keep balance by being informed, reading a lot, and music, playing a little piano, listening to good music, calming myself. Believe me, that's a challenge sometimes. You know, get back to the Blaine house, go, okay, tomorrow's another day. But, no, I have great communications with my family, and my brothers and sister we're all best friends, and we get along so well. I got people to talk to anytime I want, so.
Yeah, nice.
And this is a tough question. It's a tough thing to do, especially when you're so passionate and you want to do everything, and you wish that there were 60 hours in a day, not 24. But I agree with both, Governor Mills and Tracie in that you have to prioritize, first of all, and schedule. Like we talked about this, but we're able to accomplish so much by really scheduling things. So and I love the saying, you work smarter, not harder. So that's part of it, right? Whenever I'm in work mode, I'm in work mode. I do not, I put aside, I know a lot of us do social media and we're scrolling every 5 minutes, put that away. Focus on the work, really kind of channel all my effort into it at that time. And then, and especially during the pandemic, a lot of us I still work remotely from home, making sure that, in the evening, I leave that time for my family, for my kids, and I was in the very beginning getting into that bad habit of, wanting to check my emails for work, and I'm like, no, I'm not working, So I really challenge each and every one of us to make sure that we, again, schedule wisely, prioritize, and when you are, not working, then don't work. Enjoy your families, enjoy your friends, do like music, cook. I love to cook, so I'm in the kitchen a lot. But allowing yourself that room to have some me time, to really breathe and decompress, and just doing some self-care. That's really, really important for your mental health, especially during a pandemic. And thankfully we're kind of at the tail end, hopefully. But really focusing on yourself, and when you're studying and working, do that. And then when you're not doing it, then enjoy and separate the two.
Wonderful. I could do this all afternoon. So I hear that some of you in the audience might have some questions. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question? Yes, Jenny.
I work directly with the students in their accounts and their bills. And I might be one of the first people to find out that a student is in dire need, something's happened. Often it's the women, and what I hear occasionally is, my childcare disappeared, I can't get to class, what can I do? And then they've got to withdraw, and they possibly face with retraction of their financial aid. So now they're in debt because of a childcare issue. Are there any additional plans? I saw something recently about down a little more southern Maine for some plans, but are there any additional plans to help, say, EMCC set up childcare during the day, or at least segments when the students are in class that we can help them with?
Well, President Dagler is right down the hall. We talk about this so many times. I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's a passion of mine. I talked to the university chancellor, I talked to the president of Maine Community Colleges. I said, where's your daycare? Where's your child care? And usually it's, well, we're going to do. So just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the University of Maine Farmington campus, and I announced some of our grant money going to develop, expand early childhood education programs and child care programs. During the pandemic, this was highlighted. A lot of women in particular left the workforce because of the COVID-19 virus, and because of businesses changing models and stuff and such, and also because they couldn't find childcare, or their kids were out of school because of an outbreak and whatnot. So 3 things we're doing, in part with federal money, in part in the supplemental budget. Expanding the slots for early childhood education so we can train the trainers, train more people to provide quality child care, early childhood educators. Secondly, expanding the physical plant for child care facilities. We're giving out grants to expand the physical plant so that more slots could open. And thirdly, helping pay people better pay. Pay people more to do child care. That means stipends. We were providing stipends most of last year to daycare providers, workers, and we want to pick that up again and continue it through the biannual budget. So it's a complicated problem. Everybody I talk to says child care. Workforce depends on child care workforce. And it's a problem we're seeing in Maine and many other states as well, but we're going to tackle it. We are tackling it. And hopefully more businesses will have on-site child care, more campuses such as this one will have on-site child care, and you won't have to worry about having to leave work early, having to leave school, or even drop out of school for lack of child care.
Other questions? Yes.
This is for Marwa. What can we in the audience do to promote inclusion, diversity, and those things here in Maine? Because we don't have a lot of diversity, but that's changing right now. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to make sure that some of the mistakes that have happened in other states don't happen here. So I'm wondering, how can we get involved in being part of the solution?
Thank you, that's a wonderful question. And I would say find those organizations that really help. So I love the Maine Multicultural Center because we do a lot of work with, across the board. not just with immigrants, but with, new Mainers and just working with people across
They
the
can't
board.
hear
Oh,
you.
sorry, oh, yeah. So, with like, organizations like Maine Multicultural Center, so, looking for organizations that help. But even on an individual basis, we can work on ourselves. So making sure, that we check our bias on a regular day. I mean, it's called unconscious bias for a reason. Most of us don't even know what biases we hold, and it takes a little bit of soul searching, a little bit digging into ourselves. There are implicit bias tests that I always advise people to look into. It just kind of gauges where our biases are. And once we know what our biases are, then we're able to interrupt them so they don't become microaggressions. And that is, extremely, extremely important, especially as we see this area and all over Maine becoming more diverse. So we can help others, and again, by interrupting that bias, we're able to lift others and really kind of, lift each other up. So that's an excellent question. Look for organizations, do that internal work, and I put myself, first and foremost. I come from a diverse background, I'm certified in doing this work, but I check my biases on a regular basis to make sure that I, don't look at someone and judge them, things that, again, become a microaggression to me that are so small, but realizing that my intentions, even if they're not ill intentions, that does not negate the impact that it has on people. So making sure that I'm intentional about my impact on others. I hope that helps.
It does, I'm a human service major, so
Oh,
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
You're awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question for Tracie. Tracie, what advice would you give a young woman who is entering a male-dominated career?
Thank you for that, Liz, I appreciate it. My first thought, my first instinct is to say this sentence to you, and it is to know your sentence. And what that means is, there'll be opportunities or comments made in a situation that when you walk away from it, you're like, that comment was not okay. Or I don't feel good about it, and sometimes we try to attach to that comment the person's intent. Was that person trying to joke with me, or was that person trying to insult me? It's not up to us to decide what that person's intent is. So when you know your sentence and you're able to say to them, what was your intent with that? My sentence is, were you trying to joke with me, or were you trying to offend me? And then I wait for the pause. I let the person know that I completely expect that question to be answered. And when I say that, the person's making the statement to me or in my presence pauses, thinks about it, and most oftentimes is apologetic and meant just to be funny. But it's important for us as women to set our boundaries, set our expectations, and not let those be swayed, because we're clearing the path for the women beside us and the women coming behind us. So my very first thing is know your sentence. My second is bring others with you. I have an amazing team of people that I work with, and I would dare say I love the people that I work with. And I help my staff to feel empowered. I have them add agenda topics. I say, what do you want discussed? They're all presenters, but Tracie, I don't like to public speak. Well, here's an opportunity for growth. Every single person in my team is a presenter, and we recognize their strengths and talk about their own professional development. So they become better employees for JMG, but they also become these amazing leaders and these confident people within themselves to be able to move forward beyond me. My best meetings are the meetings that I don't have to say anything, because my staff has been able to cover absolutely every topic.
Thank you. Yes, Liz.
With running for office and getting into training camp, that gave you great structure for it. How might people get involved in community engagement, in some civic action without running for office? How do we start to see that people can have a place to act on the world so that they can grow into those leadership positions?
Governor Miles, do you want to take that?
Boy, a lot of things. I mean, oops. Being a leader, leadership isn't confined to elective office. You can be a leader in your classroom. You can be a leader at the workplace, in your job. You can be a leader by listening to other people and reflecting on what they say, what they're hearing and saying, and making decisions based on good information. Sometimes making decisions that you don't think are necessarily the popular thing to do at the moment, but that's sometimes what takes courage, whether it's in your family, your workplace, your classroom, your community, to stand up for what you see as the truth and engage in that discussion with other people, whether they're neighbors or co-workers or whoever. Just engaging in the discussion that makes our civic life so much more robust, democratic, and vibrant. That's what I say as a leader and what you can do, every one of you, whether you run for a public office or not. But don't be afraid to run for office either. We need you. We need you all there.
Yeah.
Marwa or Tracie, anything to add to that?
Exactly what Governor Mills said, I didn't, maybe 10 years ago, if you told me I'd run for office, I'd say you're crazy. To campaign and knock on doors, I'm like, oh, that's not me. But so I did other things, like I put myself in the community, and there's so many different volunteer positions out there, so I really did, like whatever your passion, wherever it lies, place yourself there. For me it's education, so I did PTO and I put myself in the classrooms and DEI work. So anybody that wanted help or wanted use me, I can speak for free. I can give you my lived experiences, and that helps people. Stories help, and so I did all of this work for free for many, many years, and because I truly enjoyed it. But then when it came to running for office, and I agree wholeheartedly with Governor Mills, and I challenge each and every female in this room, males and females, but today's Women's Day, so the females in the room that, we need to run for office. We need to put ourselves out there. More women do not run for office because of our children and, our responsibilities. And Tracie and I were talking about this. We're always like, we're so busy. But if you truly are, if you're interested, you'll make the time. There are so many different resources to help you. So many different organizations that can help you with campaigning and running and getting you trained in that manner. But, our voices need to be heard, and especially when it comes to gender equity and gender bias. And so for us as females to put ourselves out there, it's tough, but, we're needed.
I would add that to encourage others to be engaged in community engagement, the first suggestion would be to model. So to model that behavior. As a high school student, I always was involved in my community, and then as I aged, I continued to do community service, and then I would do community service with both of my children. The expectation was both of my kids would do community service with me, and I would drag them along. And in JMG, every single JMG student does community service. That is the expectation, and it benefits our communities, but it also benefits the individual. So every single person who's involved in community service, the more you're involved and give back to your community, the more you realize that you matter and that you're valued and you're an important part of the fabric of our society. The other thing it does is it keeps people in Maine. We want to keep all of you in Maine. So to encourage people to be engaged in their communities is also going to help keep people in Maine, but help them build resilient strategies because they know they're important.
In the back of the room, yeah.
So as a student, one of the biggest current issues as far as getting to from school and work, right, is the astronomically high gas prices. Representative Laurel, I forget her last name, Libby, yes, has proposed a 30-cent a gallon gas tax be cut. Is that something that you would be for or against?
That's for you, Marwa. I think we're all we're all getting hit in the pocketbooks about with the high price of gasoline and heating oil and things at the grocery store. And my supplemental budget is proposing to address that in many, many ways. First of all, by giving money back to the people who sent it to us, giving cash back in people's pockets now so they can spend it on higher prices for fuel, groceries, and such like. That whole matter is in the Appropriations Committee right now. If they choose to consider a gas tax suspension, they certainly, I'm willing to look at all potential avenues of redress as immediate and as efficient as we can to get money back into the pocketbooks of people, of Maine taxpayers.
We have time for one last question. Oh, I'm gonna, you're gonna have to arm wrestle. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
So you guys talk about diversity a lot, and I came from a very diverse background, and I saw a lot of programs that were against me, like the HHS was against me due to my behavioral problems and a lot of other stuff, as well as some group homes and, you know, Sweetser, I was in Sweetser, and, you know, there's a lot of diversity problems in there. How are you guys, yeah, I don't know, is there a plan to solve any of that, or, I don't know.
I'm glad you're here. You sound like you've had a tough. You obviously have courage and stamina to get through life to this point, and I welcome you here. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you power through. Whatever social services here can do to help, whatever you need, I think the help is here. So thank you for being here. More power to you.
Miles. Go ahead, Miles.
I have a question for Governor Mills. First of all, I think you're a wonderful person and I love you.
I like those questions. I like those questions.
Another thing is,
Uh-oh, is it? I was on a roll.
I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4, and eventually I'm going to have to get off my father's insurance because there's a certain age limit.
Yeah.
And I guess my big thing is there going to be any affordable or more affordable acts of insurance for kids, students with disabilities or adults with disabilities?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and more power to you too. Thank you for being here. My oldest grandchild has autism. He's not as lucky as you are in some respects. You're here, you're doing things. But yes, there are some programs, and we're working on, and we were just talking about that earlier before the panel started, about programs for adults or who've aged out of the system who have autism. And yes, there are things available, including insurance under the Affordable Care Act and certain housing programs and whatnot. Did you want to say something about this, or no? I thought you were ready to jump in.
You got half an hour?
The
And
answer
could
is
I get a
yes.
picture with you after this? I want to
I don't know. Ask the first question again, that was good.
We love you too, Miles.
Well, to conclude our activities today, I would invite Dr. Wayne Burton to share a few comments.
Well, on that score, I got into public life and got elected to the legislature while I was in higher ed because I vowed never to let my country do something in my name that I wasn't involved in. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Now, autistic kids became one of my causes because I have one. And if you want to get involved in something and change it, you got to get involved in the process. It was actually, one of my projects was getting the Martin Luther King holiday bill passed in New Hampshire, and during that, I was called a communist sympathizer.
Wow.
And I went back and read Margaret Chase Smith's testimony, and I said, she can do it, I can do it too. So it took a while. And actually, one of my idols was Shelley Pingree, because I met her when she had a yarn business out on North Haven. We used to stay in Vinyl Haven, and I wow, how did this woman really pick up on the Island Rights stuff and turn it into her cause? I just wanted to say that I want to thank the members of the panel for reminding us that our state and country are at their best when all artificial barriers to people reaching their fullest potential as leaders disappear. In that regard, I am proud to note that 4 of the 5 executive leaders of Eastern Maine Community College, including Liz Russell, who's the vice president, are all women.
Yeah, right.
All very effective leaders. I also point out that over half of our 26 department chairs are women leaders.
Wow.
3 of the 7 Maine Community College presidents are women leaders. 6 of the United States senators representing Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts
That's
are
right.
all women.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of meeting all of them, or working with them, and they are spectacular. But we can't really rest until a woman occupies the White House. Perhaps someone who is with us today.
Who's Russell?
You have a search committee for that? Governor Mills, thank you for being a role model for all of us in these very difficult times. We really appreciate it. It's
Thank
not
you for having
easy
me.
being a public leader right now. Marwa and Tracie. Really remarkable, she still has her sense of humor. That she'll need for the next year or so.
That's few months.
I want to thank Marwa and Tracie for being the very successful and effective regional leaders that you are. And I thank to everyone for being here today. We cannot allow the pandemic to deter us from accomplishing the goal of equity for all. We cannot do that. Thanks Shane for arranging this. Thanks Mariah for all of your work. And be safe as you leave. And thank you very much for being here at Eastern Maine Community College. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, everyone, for being here.